Noise canceling on. Right now, waking up, dealing with the practical. Did a live stream on my other channel and sipping on some tea with heavy cream. I began the day. So this is in reference to easing your way in to a no carb or very low carb. I don't really believe in a no carb approach. I think that there's definite moments where it comes up where you're like, just about a year and a half ago, I was dropping weight so quickly, and I weighed about 155 pounds at a little over 6 feet tall. Sure, my waist was like 28 inches, and I was getting very ripped, and I was achieving all the things that I thought I was going for. But there was this dead emptiness inside of me. I was following too closely and adhering too closely. This is something that you got to watch out for broadly on this social media, is that what's selling books is what's selling ideologies, right? What's selling these concepts are extremes. Getting away from those extremes and learning how the body systems work is much more efficacious and leads you toward autonomy. And no one wants you to do this. This isn't a government conspiracy. This has to do with capitalism and the artifice of creating something, a symbol, right, to where one has to go back to the doctrine that's being taught. And this is, you could say that there's no mistake where they broadly in social media where the term guru is used broadly in reference to fitness and nutrition, because it is a lifestyle, it's a way. So I do believe that everything that is being posited, from fasting, really trying to spark off this apoptosis and autophagy, hey, there's a lot to that. Looking at gluconeogenesis and the heavy correlation back to cortisol, when you're waking up, your body's going to go through these melatonin to serotonin switches every single day. You want that to happen. Otherwise, you're not going to gain the lucidity. And we don't have to go off on trails and talk about aromatic amino acids or bioluminescence, consciousness at the microtubule level. Don't have to go that deep into it. But getting into a place where you don't feel like you're failing constantly. And you're going to do this, but why not plan ahead of time? In other words, when you cut those carbohydrates out, so what this morning looked like was, I'll do either a fast or I'll go for just 1 scoop of protein powder. Right? I'm focusing on the orthomolecular. I'm going through this switch, coming out of slow wave sleep cycle, going from melatonin to a cortisol effect. I'm in gluconeogenesis. I want to take in more vitamin C. I want to boost the effects, right, on the cortical steroid, right? How our bodies respond in an immune system boosting response, right? I want to boost those attributes. I want to heighten my natural growth hormone secretion, which is going to take place when you look at the trial, when you look at these dips and these peaks. The most important time for you to try and suspend that growth hormone excretion, the natural growth hormone, is coming out of slow wave sleep cycle, to where you're taking nothing in for hours and you're going into exercise, right? You're going into a mitochondria proactive, aerobic stimulating, fat burning, gluconeogenic response, right? You want to set the mood, set the tone, set the environment. And then the first thing I'll do is, like, I just had this huge scramble with some beef that I made last night and bacon. I'll tell you, for some reason, I can't even do any of this without bacon. One of the main tenets that I went back to, some days all I would do is eat primarily like 80% of what I ate in that day was bacon. Like, it's crazy, but for me, pork has always been that meat that works most perfectly. Just the similarity. There's a joke where they call human meat long pig, right? We don't want to get morbid there, but there's a very close similarity. So there's going to be an assimilation of pork, because it's not so much like us that we're going to get sick from it, as long as we're cooking it properly and trying to get the highest quality resources when it comes to pork and ham and so forth. But I really feel like also there's always a little bit more glycogen that seems to be stored in the actual muscle of the pork, that I think that it offers. There's something about pork, it could be in the amino acid profile, that just works far better for me personally than beef does. But I still eat beef, right? And there's a big difference between beef and cattle. Like, it's crazy how people that are raising cattle are making less and less money. Yet this whole idea of there being plenty of beef, like, where the fuck is it coming from, right? How are the beef prices going way up while farmers are paid less and less for their cattle, right? So it's pretty crazy. And it goes into some conspiratorial areas that aren't so conspiratorial, where it gets into genetic modified foods, but also lab grown meats and so forth. That beef itself would become a moniker unto itself, like a corporatized name, like all these packages sold in Congress that appear to be one thing, and then you look in deeper and there's a lot more going on under the surface. So I wanted to just do a quick one on how I move into really a carb-free zone, to where I don't crave the carbohydrates, but then I have to decide whether or not I'm feeling like I'm overtraining. Because what I tend to do is I tend to walk more, my body weight drops, my body fat drops, and I go into this hours long walks or pace walking. I'll even, like right now, if I can't take a walk outside, if there's some inclement weather and another reason why I shouldn't go outside for one reason or the other, I'll walk for 8 or 9 hours indoors, right? So I'm just going into that right now. I feel amazing when I can make it through 14 to 16 hours, and it takes me a few days, to where at night I'll eat a little bit of fruit, maybe some honey. And after about 3 or 4 days of that, I no longer crave the fruit or the honey, and I'm able to go in for 24 hours, 48 hours, right? The whole point to this one is that you're not living to this ascetic lifestyle where there's only one way, and there's a guru and there's an authority figure, and you have to do it exactly like that. That's not how our bodies work, and that's not how the energetics work. There's a flux and there's a flow, and our bodies utilize available resources to produce that ATP energy. And that's what we have to get back into, is how we can healthfully go about doing this. So I would recommend, if you're really trying to do this and you keep hitting the wall, start out in gluconeogenesis in the morning, right? Along with your walk, more aerobics in the morning. You want to get in that nice, solid, high calorie one meal, single meal. Doesn't mean that you're stuck to one meal for that whole day, but you're going to try to fill yourself up. So what I just had is I had like 3 eggs, a large Angus beef patty, 3 or 4 slices of bacon, all in a scramble, with ample amounts of cheese, right? And of course, olive oil, and I'm ordering some fish oil up in the coming days. And my kids are actually on doing ketosis now. They're like kind of playing around with the carnivore a little bit, but they're not married to that. But they're trying to keep their carbs down as low as possible. Because my son, my older son, has fatty liver. He's on meds, and he finally is breaking down under 210 pounds, and his weight was just skyrocketing. And a lot of the things that I talked to them about over years and years and years, 20 years in fact, Things like, the canola oil and the various types of oil causing inflammation and actually keeping your body from utilizing omega 3s properly, right? So I'm able to like actually sync my lifestyle in with them, and they know, my older son is 195 pounds, my younger son's two getting under like 212, 210, but they're both experiencing issues with their weight, right? And last year I weighed 155 pounds and I was eating 4,500 to 5,000 calories a day. So the whole thing is you never want to undereat. You don't have to watch your calories when you do this. You can eat things like nuts and so forth, which I was doing last night, but you don't want to consider that obviously carnivore, and you want to have a really clean jurisdictional line where you're drawing the line between what is dirty carnivore, what's carnivore, and what is just outright ketosis, right? And I don't think again that this rigid structure has to be in play at all. In fact, I like the guy that made up the whole skeleton diet. I was watching him for a while. I want to go back in and actually watch he and his wife's channel because I like their energy. He's a cyclist. He's preaching something that I really don't agree with. But when I look up the actual nutritional data, it actually starts to make sense. Like, in other words, what I'm saying is the body will make up for any errors that you think you're making. Your body already knows how to combat that, and the end result is when you eat something that you shouldn't, you have energy, and it's time to put that into motion, so trying to, burn it off, so to speak, right? And then you don't get angry with yourself because you had fruit. You pre-plan it. You don't get angry with yourself if those days where you're eating fruit in the evening goes on for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. No, because you want your body to get used to a certain methodology. And once you do that, you can categorically see exactly where the exercise is going to take place. So that's what our friend over with that skeleton diet was talking about, is he had to start to modify his diet. He saw that his bones were breaking, becoming very brittle. He was following the sugar diet, right? But he was also seeing how these insulin growth factors interact here as well, right? So you want to get into the place where you are in ketosis for 3 to 4 weeks consistently. I mean, that's where the gold lies. But you have to ask yourself, if I'm never able to do that, and I'm never able to stick to this like ascetic, very strict regimen, what if it took me 3 or 4 months, right? To produce, where I never went in and I produced that level of ketone, to where I had to stay in those really strict parameters for long periods of time. And the answer is that you will still achieve the results that you sought out to achieve and more. And the reason it's more is because you never had to reach those depressive states that we just can't deal with in society today, where you have to, you're held to the, with a gun, you're held to the your nose to the grindstone to be able to produce something with the most aggressive. Like, get away from the aggressiveness. Get away from that whole thing. So gradual intensity training has really helped me out when I remind myself of what it means, and I apply that to diet as well. I'm taught that taking a more, for lack of a better word, a more Epicurean approach, if you wanted to like really label it with some sort of philosophical term, but you're never really going into a hedonistic pleasure state, right? In fact, you're trying to detach the whole notion of pleasure and food together. But there's moments where undeniably, you go through different things in life. Your body wants to eat more calories. It wants to eat carbohydrates at times. It wants to take in simple sugars or chocolate or cacao or whatever it is. And when you keep those tools close by, keeping agave on hand, keeping honey there. For me, I'm ordering my kids Swerve, brown sugar Swerve. That's, the erythritol and the monk fruit and so forth. That's the way to go. And as long as your body kind of tastes those sweet flavors, you realize that you're not missing out at all, right? But I do think that there's a point where people go too far where, like this is subjective and this is something that they're both doing. Both getting almond flour, right? And they're going to be making baked goods and so forth. I never go that far. It's not that I don't think there's room for it. And maybe we'll, end up making cookies together and using swerve and almond flour and so forth and using cauliflower instead of rice, things like this, right? I always felt like that was just taking it too far. But I think when you do have family doing this, that is when the introduction or the induction of different more exotic type foods, would say. I mean, that's probably not the term, but eating the types of integrating the types of foods that will allow you to assumably eat things like cookies or pastries and so forth that tastes amazing, and you almost can't taste the difference. You're using, coconut butter and much more keto based, right? Eating different versions of like macaroni and cheese where you can't really tell where you're using different forms of egg product or even egg noodles, things like this, right? To where you're really seriously just eating the eggs and eating and then looking more at your net carbs. There is a place for that when you have community, when you have family, and when you're doing this together, right? And you might not, the end result is you might not be able to take it down to like where I was like getting under 7% body fat and eating all the time. Didn't think I would ever even be able to get down that lean, but there I was, right? But at the same time, I just couldn't let go of that past reserve where I was so ardently impassioned by sticking to things, to the script, right? And I think that we're in a time where we have to let go of that and take what we've learned and realize that it might take a few more months, right? But that our relationships aren't worth sacrificing over ridiculous notions like reaching a certain number that we can only reach for a ephemeral, finite period of time, to where we're going to inevitably end up dropping off versus eating, using the almond flour, eating a few nuts here and there, having some cashews, maybe backing off and eating a little bit of fruit or berries and a little honey, and then going right back into it. I think that will keep relationships happy. It gives something to do as far as a lifestyle that one can share with family members and community, right? To where you can cook together, you can still get together, you can critique the food and say, oh no, these don't work. Maybe we should try this type of flour or, use this type of sweetener. And it gives goals to people to make their relationship with food better, right? So I just wanted to throw something out there, especially coming out of the holidays. I know a lot of people are dieting. I know they're trying to lose a few pounds, but I know also there's a frustration with doing things on an permanent scale, this ephemeral, finite scale where it's like, we need to get away from that type of thinking and start to adopt long-term solutions. And so I think that flitting, for me personally, is when I'm not around anyone, right? I'm going to stay really strict because I enjoy doing that. But the second that I am around them, since they're doing something very similar, I'm going to kind of let down my guard, and maybe we'll try eating some pizza, right? The keto pizza. Maybe we'll try eating some cookies, right? That are keto cookies, things like this, and actually having fun preparing and making these specialty foods where the ingredients are found, at your local Walmart. So anyway, I think the main message in summary is relationships are much more important than numbers. And, we don't want to get into the stochastic models or the doxastic models, but these terms really apply very well, because we aren't random generators. We require proof of work, proof of existence, proof of a qualia and a healthy lifestyle that is shared and is not just this sort of autonomous singular effort, but we live a pluralistic lifestyle, and acknowledging that makes us better people in the end. All right, so take care. Great to be able to talk to you on the channel, And I hope you got something out of that one.